is we've been working with quadratic equations that are in standard form, and we're going to take standard form and we're going to change it to something called vertex form. So basically our essential question is going to be, how do we write an equation in vertex form given the standard form? Alright, so if you'll think back, we've been doing standard form of a quadratic equation for quite a while now, and the standard form, right here, standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And what we want to do today is we want to take that and we want to go from y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and we want to convert it or change it to vertex form. And vertex form is y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. And the important thing to remember from here is that the h and k, the ordered pair, represents your vertex of your parabola. So how do we write a quadratic equation in vertex form? What we're going to do is we're going to find the vertex, and we're going to find the vertex by graphing the quadratic equation on our calculator, and we're going to find our vertex, and we're going to write it down, and we're going to plug that in for h and k into the equation. Then what we're going to do is from the table, we're going to choose a second point that's on our parabola, and we're going to take that point and plug it in for x and y. And from there, we're simply going to solve for a, and then we'll write our equation. So we're going to do one example, and here it goes. The first example, and I'll zoom in a little so you can see it a little better. Our first example is write an equation in vertex form. So we're going to go, and we're going to go from vertex form. We're going to write in vertex form the equation of a parabola that is in standard form. So right here, if you remember, y equals x squared plus 2x plus 1, that is in standard form. So this is standard form. And we want to rewrite this equation into vertex form. And if you remember, vertex form is y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. So we want to go from standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and we want to rewrite it in vertex form. So the first step is we're going to graph the quadratic equation and find the vertex. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph the equation on our calculator. So we're going to go to our calculator. So everybody find your calculator. And you're going to turn it on. Okay. Don't save. And we're going to go to add graph. Make it a little darker there. So we're going to go to number 2, add graph. And when we add graph, sorry guys, having a little difficulty here. We're going to add graph, and we're going to type in our equation exactly the way it looks. So we're going to type in x squared plus 2x plus 1. And we're going to hit enter. And if you notice, our parabola opens up, which means our vertex is a minimum. So if you remember, you go menu, and we want to go to number 6, analyze graph. And our vertex is a minimum, so we're going to go to number 2, minimum. We move this closer over to our parabola. You click, and then you move until it's in your shaded. As soon as you hear the word see the word minimum, you click, and it tells you it's -1, 0. So right here, our vertex is the point -1, 0. So right on this part, our h is -1, and our k is the point is 0. So our vertex is negative 1, 0. That's our H and our K. Now, after you do that, step 2 is we're going to plug the H and K, the negative 1 and the 0, back into the equation. So right here, it's going to be y equals A times the quantity x minus h. And h is negative 1. So we're going to put negative 1. And remember, this is our h from above. Squared plus k. And in this case, k was 0. So we're going to put 0 where the k is. So we're just plugging into the vertex equation for h and k. That's step 2. Step 3 is we're going to choose a second point from our graph, our parabola, and we're going to plug it in. So you already have this on your calculator, and we want another point. You can either count or you can do Control T, and remember your table shows up. So right here, if I look, another point would be like positive 1, positive 4. So my second point that I have chosen is going to be the point 1, 4. And remember that in this, 1 is my x, and 4 is my y. And that just happens to be a second point on our parabola. Okay, so we have h and k, and we have x and y. So now we're going to take all of these numbers and we're going to plug it into our equation in vertex form. And if you remember, vertex form is y equals a times the quantity x minus h, quantity squared, plus k. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our numbers from above in step 1 and step 2 and 3, and we're going to plug them in. So right here, instead of y, y is 4. So we're going to put the number 4. Equals a. We don't know a, so we're going to leave a as a, times the quantity x. Well, in our point, x was 1. So we're going to replace x with the number 1 right here. Minus h. Well, if we come back here, our h was negative 1. See, hk and h is negative 1. So we're going to put negative 1. And again, that's h. That's part of our vertex. And finally, we're going to use k. Well, k from our vertex was 0. So right here, we're going to put the number 0. And that's step 3. You choose the second point using your table. And then you plug in the x and the y, the h and the k. And that's step 3. And finally, step 4. Step 4, we're going to solve for a, and we're going to plug in the values. So we're going to take what we have in step 3. So we're going to rewrite it as 4 equals a times the quantity 1 minus negative 1, all squared, plus 0. And we're going to simplify and then solve for a. This is 4 equals a. 1 minus negative 1 becomes 2, and we have to square it. Remember, right here, when you have a minus and a minus, it becomes plus, and 1 plus 1 is 2. And then we have plus 0. So right here we have 4 equals 2 times 2, or 2 squared, is 4. So we get 4a plus 0. So really we end up with 4a equals 4. And we need to find a. So the opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. So a equals 1. So now we know the value of a. And again, a is 1. So once we know all our values, we're going to go back and plug in to this equation right here. You're going to leave y as y, and instead of a is 1, x stays x, and right here we get minus h. And remember, h was negative 1, so minus 1, all squared, plus k, and k is 0. Then we're going to simplify further. So we get y equals 1 times x plus 1 squared. How did I get plus 1? Again, minus a negative all becomes positive. And then you have plus 0. And this is our equation in vertex form. Okay, so what I wanted you to do is, this is an equation in standard form, y equals x squared plus 2x plus 1. And this is the exact same equation, but in vertex form. Y equals 1 times the quantity x plus 1 squared plus 0. And what we do is we leave the x and the y because we want the equation to represent any point of the parabola. So we leave x and y. We don't plug in for them in the end. So that's how you go from vertex or standard to vertex form. And now you're going to take your assignment and you begin doing the same exact steps. And good luck.